Hello, everybody. All right. Who here has dreamt of working at a prestigious company like Google or Amazon? All right. I had those exact same dreams as well of being recognized as one of the best. And I was fixated on how to get into these companies. And I found a solution. For those who might not know me, my name is Tam. I'm a junior at Sacramento State University, studying for my computer science degree. I held previous positions, subcontracted under Google, and is currently on my way to intern at Amazon as a software development engineer. As much as I could relish in my accomplishments, that's not why I'm here today. I'm here because I'm unhappy. I'm disappointed that so many talented engineers like yourselves aren't getting these opportunities. You've got to learn the game. And frankly, it's quite difficult. And for good reason. So in the next hour, I'm going to distill 10 years of my experience into answering this thought-provoking question of how do I get into these prestigious companies like Google or Amazon? In the next hour, I'm going to cover my 3 key strategies that allowed me to land a position at Amazon as a software development engineer. First, I'll go over how to build an identity. Second, I'll go over how to frame your experiences. And third, I'll break down the application and interview process. In the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to write them down so that you can stay as present as you can with me during this time. All right, let's begin. Building an identity. And why, oh, why would I start with that? How is identity integral to landing a position? Do you know yourself well enough? Your strengths, your weaknesses? This is nice to be aware of, but this is not the content when I talk about building an identity. For the majority of my life, I've been acutely aware and alert of other people's reactions. I've been acutely aware of how people walk, talk, and eat. What if I told you that I could predict someone's personality based on their values? Competent HR teams do this all the time to minimize short-term turnover, therefore increasing employee satisfaction. So what is the mapping from values to personality? What are the objectives of building an identity? The objectives are clear. It's first, aligning yourself with your goals. Second, aligning yourself with others people's goals. And third is to find the intersection between these two ideas. Let me share you my strategy for this. Be an active participant in career events such as Google I/O or the Apple developer conferences. Understand the person behind the screen. What do they like? What do they dislike? What ticks them off? What's bothering them? And third, give yourself a future. From my experience going to these career events, I've noticed something in common. They all say being able to work collaboratively in a high stress environment and obtain a high level of competency using various data structures to solve problems. This brings to me levels of openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, slight disagreeableness, and secure personality traits. And this is a key idea. What if I told you that I could derive what personalities these companies hire based on their success facets? So from Google and Amazon, looking at me versus Amazon or Google, we both have the same openness, conscientious, extroversion, and agreeable traits. Although my agreeable is a lot more agreeable than theirs. But the key idea is to find the biggest intersection between these characteristics. So what? Define your future. What do you want? And what do you value? If You answered money or working at a FANG company. Your resolution for your future might be a little too hazy. So allow me to help you with that. First, start with your personality. Then state your values. And then try to include your goals. Be sure to include a time frame, income, occupation, project, and other environmental factors with your vision. Right, here's my example. I am an open, conscientious, extroverted, mildly disagreeable, mildly neurotic person who values meaning, relationships, and impact through my work. I work well in environments that allow me to collaborate with others in a more structured way. In the next 5 years, I want a $300,000 income working as a software developer in Sacramento who is actively working on improving tax literacy for the entrepreneurial population and own a mid-sized home and a Ford F-150 Lightning Platinum model that is maintained by not me, but professionals. All right. So why is that so important? Why is that so important? From the companies that match with your personality, you want to find jobs that align with your values and your goals. So my job search is not just Google, Amazon. My job search encompasses other roles like tax analyst or legal assistant, right? It's not just software development roles. And as somebody who is heavily motivated by money, I know at the end of the day, it's just a tool. What really matters to me is the impact and the relationships I make through my work. And so with this, it's okay if you value other things like status, recognition, or innovation. I think a startup is more of your style with careers like chief technical officer, team lead, architect, or in a bleeding edge technology like AI or quantum computing roles. The thing is, don't be shy either. There's a gender study from the Business Harvard Review stating that ladies in particular, you tend to dismiss a majority of job related applications because you don't meet 100% of the job application. And this is a terrible thing to do. Not only you're selling yourself short, you are leaving no space for you to grow. So my recommendation is to apply to jobs that you meet at least 60% of the job requirements so that you have enough skills, succeed, and space to grow. Now, for a brief tangent, I want to talk about failure. Failure is inevitable. When you're being tested at the apex of your knowledge and skills, you will fail. So instead, make it your friend. Be comfortable failing. Be okay with failure. It's only a waste if you don't learn from them or if you don't try your best at them. So do your best. And now for the next thing. How do we frame our experiences such that it aligns with our personality and values, right? The objectives of framing our experience is to concisely describe your personality, values, and impact, right? And here's my strategy for this. List all of your responsibilities. Then do research on the company, mission statement, values, leadership principles. Also, stalk their employees. Look at their LinkedIn. What do they like? What do they dislike? Who do they follow? So get that information. Get a good resolution on how the company operates. And think, how does an open-minded, conscientious, extroverted, agreeable, and secure person who values meaning, relationships, and income describe their experiences? That's the key point. Describe their experiences. Most of you are aware of the STAR method: task, action, and result. But it's not a silver bullet. It misses a few key points. One of the things that it misses is that it misses cultural alignment, work cultural alignment, and nuances with results and resolutions. And it misses your thought process. So I came up with my own acronym. It's LOTAPER. Low taper. Low taper fade. Right? So it stands for love, observation, thought process, action, problem, end game, and reflection. Why are these all important? Let me show you why. We'll first start with love. Think about loving somebody, something. O, start your story with an observation. T, describe your thought process before you take action. So that's A, action. P, problem. Describe the problem space. E, describe the end game. And then R, reflect on what you've learned and the results. So here's my example. Noticing that the team's morale was low after a horrible performing quarter, I thought to take my team out for dinner and raise morale by addressing the elephant in the room and seeking additional support. While I was trying to invite people out, not everyone wanted to join. Although some team members who initially declined, I wanted to get the team together so that they wouldn't feel alone. And in trying to convince them, I was able to have them reconsider to join us in boosting the team's morale and set sights on the next quarter's goals. In doing so, we achieved a record high revenue generation for the last quarter of the year, just in time for New Year's. All right, this is long. We're not going to put this on our resume. So, how do we distill our story down? So, here are a few rules. I will think about how many, how much, how often, how long, include people, outcomes, money, and results. So here's the distilled version. Orchestrated quarterly, morale-centered team events, allowing space for a team of 15 to reflect, connect, and improve on team outcomes, resulting in a 50% improvement in employee retention and a 5% average increase in revenue generation quarter by quarter. Pretty intense. Another distilled version, improved pre-existing CI/CD pipelines with GitHub Action integrations, with automated testing, security testing, linting, and clearly defined workflow processes within a 3-month time span, improving average response time per ticket by 20% and increased system stability in production by 50 for 100,000 annual users. Now to the cover letter. For some of you, the cover letter might be a little redundant, but let me tell you, it's not supposed to be. It's your chance to empathize with the company, to relate to the company, and to formally express your excitement for the job. Right, here are my strategies. First, search for a related project that you want to work on. Then think about what problems they might encounter and how you can solve them with your skills. And then give more context to your personality and values in the center of the cover letter. But there are a few rules. Keep it 1 page, maximum of 5 paragraphs, with the last paragraph being a conclusion, stating your gratitude for the opportunity and consideration. Be sure to input the company's name, address, position, and make sure that you put your name, not your address, all right, your city and zip code, and your contact information. So all this is good and gravy. We got our resume, we got our cover letter, but there's this beloved ATS system that we all talk about, that we all hate. I want to tell you that I did some research on this. With 7 weeks of dissecting how an ATS system works, I'm going to tell you the strategy here. ATS machines work through either 1 or 2 algorithms, the OCR or the PDF document parser, right? The OCR scanner, right, is chosen if the parser does not work. So there's that parser pipeline there. And let me tell you, who has worked with OCR before? It is a very primitive AI that recognizes letters, and you could get a lot of mumbo jumbo off of them. They're not reliable. So the best way is to get the PDF parser pipeline to extract your data. become digitally accessible. My strategy here is to use the latest desktop version of Microsoft Word while applying appropriate styles. While applying appropriate styles like headers, lists, bullet points. Use a maximum of 2 serif or sans serif fonts. Maximum of 2 pages. Do not include any images or graphics or exact start dates. And for my research, these are the accepted date formats. Look at the space in between the dashes. So all this is good and gravy. Now, what if you're still not sure? You can use online tools like careers.com or Simplify to try to find some congruency between the job description and your resume and cover letter. The goal here is to get 80%. Anything more, anything less. If it's more, you're pulling hairs. You're not being productive. If it's less, try to get that up. You're not being relevant enough. So 80% is that good bell curve. LinkedIn, I think it's underrated. A lot of people talk about LinkedIn, but it is a tool that you can use, that recruiters use all the time to identify who you are, if you're real. So the problem with applications is that they don't know if you're a real person or not. If you remember zero trust, right? Who remembers that? It is a problem. Phishing, right? Not knowing if the application is actually a real person. So LinkedIn is one of the ways, one of the triggers, and a cover letter of how they identify you as a person, right? It's just the name of the game. It's just the name of the game. And LinkedIn has done a very good job on verifying if you're a good person. I mean, not a good person, an alive, breathing human. All right. So if you don't have your LinkedIn, put everything on your LinkedIn and put a profile picture on your LinkedIn as well. Okay. Don't forget that. Don't forget that. So for those who are curious, this is the resume that allowed me to get an interview at Amazon. Look at the dates. I know it may seem stacked. You guys don't need to be this stacked. Now, my resume is not optimal. Is not optimal. Why? Because it doesn't display my responsibilities in a way that shows value, or, I mean, it does show value. That shows personality and my personal values. All right. So I didn't use the low taper distillment method to try and get a good resume going. So from the 742 applications, there were 22 online assessments, 2 phone interviews, and 2 in-person interviews. This year, I got 6 fewer phone calls. This is pretty bad. So those who might not know, there are internship seasons. Internship seasons start in October. Start in October. The big companies go first, right? This is where you put most of your effort, most of your time, right? Because you want to land a big tech job. We got to do a lot of legwork before that, right? So imagine the time spent if you're starting from ground zero, creating a resume, creating a cover letter. So just that's something to keep in mind. Okay, there are actually 2 hot times. Okay, one is November, right? Is when most of the internship applications open, and the second are in February. Obviously, those passed, but there are still lingering local internships open. So apply to those if you haven't already. All right, now the interview and application process. The interview and application process. We are unique in that computer science and engineering students are tested or quizzed on how well they can program theoretically. All right. So this is a huge thing in our domain. The beloved online assessment. Touched on it before, but we'll go more in depth about it. And then there are the flavors of interviews after the online assessment. There are the behavioral, the technical, and the design interviews, right? And I'll break them down for you. And there are particular goals for each. for the technical assessment, the online assessment, there are few things you want to focus on. They want to know if you can code on a theoretical level. They want to know how clean your code is. And also, they want to know how you think. That's the most important part, how you think, right? So here's my strategy. Learn the why and how of using different data structures. This is important, the why and how to use different data structures. Apply your knowledge through leak code problems. Have descriptive variable names and function names. These are important. And optimize for time and space complexity. And finally, truly understand the problem domain. Passing all the tests and getting the optimized solution is all well and dandy. That's very clear from the get-go. But what's not clear is how they assess it, right? When I talk about how clean your code is, right? When I talk about how well you think, that's not clear cut. So let me break it down. What if they judged you on your variable names? Are they descriptive enough? What if they judged you on your function names? Why do you use functions to begin with? What's the cost of using a function? If you can't answer that, it's because it takes a leap pointer call to go to the function and execute the code, right? It takes an extra leap to dissect the code. So upon that, do you understand the problem statement enough? This is an example of what I mean. You're given a list of cars where each car initially holds one package. You're also given a list of package transfers where each transfer operation in packet transfers is represented as a list from car and to car, indicating that the package is transferred from the car ID from car to the car with ID to car. Your task is to determine the list of car IDs that would hold the packages after all the transfers. And you'll return a final list of car IDs being returned in ascending order. All right. This seems very trivial, right? We'll start with instantiating a set and inputting the cars in the car set and iterating through the packet transfers while removing from car from the list, from the set, and to car to the list, inserting to car to the list, and returning all the items in the set in a sort array. But do you truly understand the problem? What if from car wasn't even in the set to begin with? What if to car already had a package? Here are the things that you want to think about. So previously, looking at the car set variable name, that is not descriptive enough, right? What's the purpose of it, right? So change it to cars in transit. I think that's more descriptive than car set. Like, what's the point of a car set, right? So be more descriptive with your variable names. And second, error handling. Introduce why the problem set would throw an error, right? If you knew that all the packages are in the initial set, then why are there inputs that are giving me trash values? So this is a good way to know if you understand the problem set or not. Right? It's not just getting the optimized value, optimized algorithm, or passing all the tests. It's also to test on how well you could spot potential errors. So after all that's done and dandy on your OA, we move on to the interview, where you're interviewing a person one-on-one. Typically is one-on-one. I haven't had an experience where it's not one-on-one. So the objectives of the interview, it is to see if you're a culturally good fit, to know you more deeply, and to know if you have the skill to succeed. So imagine it to be a date, okay? I know some of you are more introverted. That sucks. Be open to showing yourself more, being more vulnerable than you feel like is necessary, right? That's what it feels like if you're an introvert trying to go on a date. Okay, that's from not my experience, but from what I've heard from other people's experience. So try to be more vulnerable and we'll start from there. So here's my strategy So for your technical interview, they'll give you a problem. It's a good skill to think out loud about your thought process. Think out loud. Talk to, like you're talking to a hamster or to a little rubber ducky. That's important. And then ask clarifying questions that are not already explicit, right? If it's already in the problem domain, if it's written out, if it's not already explicit, there's no need to ask. So be sure to know how to take notes during the technical interview. You can take notes on the IDE itself. That's where I recommend. But you can also take notes on your notepad. Typically, you would want to say that you're working on paper so that they can get an idea of you are not cheating. So it's a flag. Communicate with your interviewer, right? They're a person. They are a person. Be descriptive with your function and variable names. Be very descriptive. Use positive descriptors like is sorted, not is not sorted. Okay, that's not how most of us think. So use positive descriptors. If your function says is not even, I will look at you and I will not like you. Okay, so prepare, okay, to apply and defend why you use a particular data structure. Apply and defend why you use a particular data structure. Why do we use functions? I told you. Why do we use functions? Given an additional hop to gather the instructions, it increases readability. Fixing bugs is also another, right? So if you have the same piece of code multiple times littered throughout your application, if it's under one function, you could fix it in one place and not have to search the whole code base to fix the other problems. Okay, so that's why we use functions, and the clause for a function, why use a function, is definitely needed. All right, and then at the end, show gratitude for the opportunity and send an email within 24 hours expressing your gratitude and excitement for a response. Now, the behavioral interview. This is where they'll kind of ask you, what have you done? Like, introduce yourself. How do you manage conflict? You know, the boring questions. So my strategy is to preemptively answer those questions before they even ask. Okay? Be preemptive in your responses. So, how do we do this? Apply your company research, right? We did that earlier on during the resume phase. Apply your company research. Use the low taper method to try and include and sprinkle on these conflict management roles and leadership roles, right? Be aware and empathize with the company values and ask clarifying questions. So imagine a date, right? That somebody just asked you questions and you just responded and you just responded. You don't know anything about the other person, right? That's, with the lack of a better word, a shitty date. You don't know the other person. Know the other person. Be ready with questions. Who they are. What do they not like? Who's their competition? Oh, not really who their competition is, but be aware that you are on a date with them. Okay, you want to know them too, as much as they want to know you. All right. Now the design interview. Some of you might not be getting this because you're applying for a more entry level role, but it's nice to be aware of. The design interview is designed to test how well you can design applications with a certain criteria. And why would you do this? We tend, as scholars, to over engineer. We tend to over engineer. And that becomes costly. And so being realistic about how we design applications is key to succeeding, right? You just can't say, oh, we're doing a microservices architecture here. Tell me more. Tell me why. Why are you doing it? Is it to serve 100 people? I think that's overkill. So remember, everything you do is apply and defend your reasoning. Apply and defend your decisions. Okay, this sounds like someone's attacking you and is not. In terms of being part of the work culture, your ideas will be tested. Your theoretical knowledge will be tested, right? It's not you as a person. It's not it's not that. I just want to make that clear. Some people, when you ask why, right, they're like, "Oh, do I really need to explain myself?" Yes, in this context, yes, you do. Yes, you do. And it's not an attack on your person. It's not an attack on you, okay? So try to, if you can isolate this early on and gather the information and distill that, that'll be very helpful for you early on in your career, okay? Show gratitude and send an email within 24 hours. After that, they will make a decision. Typically, you move on to stage 4, but sometimes you're stuck in stage 3 for in limbo for like maybe 3 months, continuous interviews. So I'd say if you are in that situation, they're trying to choose you between 1 or 2 people. You are very close to get that job, for getting that job. And so don't be discouraged. Don't be discouraged. You are 1 in 1,000, 1 in 1,000, maybe 1 in 10,000. That's tense. That's showing that you know what you're doing. If you do go into that situation, I do not recommend repeating the same stories. This is a mistake that I've seen people go through. Do not repeat the same stories. Try to create new stories. This is like a 3rd or 4th date. Like they're trying to put that ring on there, bro. So therefore, there goes the decision. So it's a date. It's a date. Think of it as a date. Okay. So when you get the offer, I don't have a slide for it, but when you get the offer, you might seem to be hard pressed not to push back and ask for a raise. I have mixed feelings about this, right? Some people don't want that friction. Some people do. Some people know that they're worth more than that. It's a case by case basis. I typically, on my first few jobs, I did not ask for a raise or for a higher wage because I was like, oh, that's great. I got the job. But it is always best to ask for one, and it's always best once you get that position to talk to your manager about your roadmap. That's why it's so important to get one-on-ones, right? They will guide you on how to get better. They will guide you on your road to success. So be aware of these things in the workplace. Be aware that you can make it. Just focus on the things that your manager might be saying. Read between the lines. Okay, you got to read between the lines. They won't explicitly say it. You got to think about it yourself. All right. Now that I've gone over my 3 key strategies of building an identity, framing your experiences, breaking down the application and interview process, you might be hard pressed to not do anything. And I would say that's the wrong move. The best time to start is today. Pick one thing you learned from this presentation and apply it this week. Maybe it's updating your resume, applying error handling to your leak code, or joining a club. Take that first step. You've got this. Believe in yourselves, and I can't wait to see where you all go. So now, for the Q&A session, what's on your mind? And what are you guys curious about? Yeah. All right, the question is, what if you have nothing to put on your resume? That's a very good point, right? You're in college, might be living with your parents, and you don't work. You're just focused on school. That was me for a bit too. And it's a good place to be in, right? You're safe, right? You're not scrambling for money, looking for rent. It's a good place to be. So my advice is that you join clubs. One of the major clubs that I'm trying to put out is called the Hive Collective, right? We're a more entrepreneurial type of club that promotes entrepreneurial activities, building applications from the ground up, design decisions that needs to be made. So joining the Hive Collective is one. The other club that I do recommend at Sac State is called the Data Structures and Algorithms Club. That's where we go over the learning new data structures, learning leak code, learning how to solve these data structures and applying them, learning how to do a technical interview. That's one of the goals. So if you don't have anything, make something happen. You have more opportunity and more power than you think. You're not hopeless. Let me tell you that. Anybody else? My first internship. That's a very good question. So my first internship was at Educational Testing Services. For those who might not know, they're the company that makes the GRE, the graduate test that you take before your graduate program. I was part of the K to 12 California standardized testing program. And with that, I was assigned the role of project manager intern. With that, I kind of learned how California and ETS manages between, okay, this is our responsibilities versus this is your responsibilities. So we get to see how business and contracts work, and you got to see big wigs. That's what they call them. So the Department of Education, senators, and everything like that. So you build connection, you get that initial experience with the low cost of you have nothing to lose. Being an intern means you have nothing to lose. You are predestined to fail, right? And they allow it. They allow it. They're opening up a position for an intern, for a person to fail and learn. And that's the biggest thing, right? And it could be with anybody, right? The word intern kind of gives that connotation out. But if you want to be competent or get that return offer, obviously you would have to learn from your mistakes. You have to learn from your mistakes. All right, very good question. Anybody else? Yeah. So the question was, I applied to 700 places. Is that all engineering? Yes, that was all engineering. Very good question. So the question is, do I have any strategies for applying to so many places in such little time that we have? And I use a tool called Simplify. I don't know if I want to show that right now, but Simplify, you could download their extension and upload your resume and cover letter. And if you know any Workday, accounts, Intel is one of them. I think NVIDIA is another Workday partner. You could automatically apply to these, not automatically, you can have a browser assisted application process apply for these companies. It's called Simplify, right? This is where you update and upload your resume, and they'll give you some hints on keywords that you should use and implement. Simplify was one of the huge ways of how I got so many applications out. They also give daily, weekly, or monthly email on new software development engineer positions all around the United States and Canada. You just got to make sure that you apply for the United States. Okay. Any other questions? Yes. Very good question. Right. The question was, do I have one general resume that I use to apply to these jobs? One resume or cover letter. So before, this is my miniature strategy, right? Remember how we say you want to align your personality and your values in your resume? That's how we tailor our resume to a company. Given that, I have many resume and cover letter archetypes. Doing all of these, right? What if a company is actually more disagreeable and they want that type of person? What if a company is more introverted and they want that type of person? What if the company wants somebody who's just a workhorse, is very highly competent, but doesn't want to talk to anybody? So there's so many combinations of these, but typically they kind of merge into my five, right? So it's either high competency, low agreeableness, or high competency, low agreeableness, high extroversion, all of the types of archetypes that I have for cover letters and resumes. So that's my strategy with navigating that, right? Is doing the research, getting that higher probability of getting that OA in that interview. Anybody else? So what would be the most valuable information that I could give to myself when I first started applying? I did not have work experience for my first internship at Educational Testing Services, right? That is a big thing. I did not have any work experience. I think I gave myself a talk. I did. When it came down to, am I valuable enough? Is am I a piece of shit? Or like, am I like just, you know, worthless? These are the conversations I used to have with myself. And, you know, it's no different, I think, with some people. I'd say, you know, be more kind with yourself, you know, be more vulnerable with people. You know, you're safe with friends that value you, or if you don't have that environment right now, find them. There are people out there who do value you as a person, right? And won't just shit talk you to death and leave you in that state of, you know, carelessness and, you know, nihilistic beliefs that the world is meaningless. But, you know, I've gone through that. I'd say the world is meaningless to a degree, but it's what you believe that matters. Belief is not about the truth. It's never about the truth. It's about what you want to bring to this world. And that's what I would have said to myself and would have instilled in me during that time because I didn't believe in myself. All right, very good question. I think I kind of lied a bit. Okay. I did have job experience, it wasn't relevant experience. I was a swim coach. I was a swim coach. And I was a high school swim coach. So the barrier to entry is very low. But if you try and extract ideas from everything that you do have value. So from my experience in swim, I was able to say facilitated emotional maturity through the medium of swim. And I think that's what got me into that way of thinking about how values, job experience, and impact all align in your resume. This is why I kind of have a hard emphasis on this. And so through that, I was able to say, you know, the hard thing to do as a coach is to reprimand somebody. Like, why would I want to reprimand a little kid? You know, why would I want to do that? That's pretty terrible for me. I thought yelling at a kid, I thought yelling was, you know, bad yelling. I don't even know how to put it in a bucket of good yelling or bad yelling, but I felt like I was yelling. You know, that's what matters. I felt like I was yelling. And when it came down to it, it was more trying to be that role model, try to be that person that pushes up in the right direction, being a guide. I'm not trying to belittle anybody. I'm trying to guide somebody. So that's one of the things that I had to think about. Any other questions? Yes. The question was if when I first started applying, how long did it take for me to get an interview? How long did it take? So it took about 800 applications. I was in community college. I was studying Japanese during this time. And I'd say from doing the applications, I was not aware of how long it took. All I was aware of and was thinking about is applying and being relevant to a company. So the question was, how do I keep track of my applications since I have so many? This is a very good question. And Simplify, they do track your applications for you, but that's not a good way of doing it. So typically, I just have an Excel sheet and just have the company name, title, job ID, and do like a little scrap up a little database and just say, okay, this is the date I put on. And then you could do some analysis saying that, okay, if it's over 90 days long, then it's probably dead. If it is dead, send them an email. I think that was one of the things that some recruiters suggested. I haven't personally done it, but I think it was more 30 days, not 90 days. 3 months is a long time, but 30 days, follow up. Anybody else? What's on your mind? Okay, the question was, where did I find all these 700 job postings that I applied for? 75% of them were on Simplify. Simplify gives out this newsletter. Looking at this SWE list, you can see a lot of possibly relevant positions. There's a repo, right? GitHub repo on summer internships for 2025, and you can subscribe to that mailing list. And this is where, you know, kind of some people say it's a numbers game. And yes, it is, but to an extent, right? If you're not getting a good ratio on your OA responses, there's something wrong with your resume. Something's not aligning. If you don't get, if you do get a lot of responses for your OA, that means you're doing a good job being relevant in the company's eyes. So you're getting that interview, right? If you're not getting an interview after an OA, there's some misalignment, right? That you gotta look for. So I do think it is a numbers game, but you just gotta piece together why you're not being picked. And maybe it's because you're not fast enough. I think being very fast, being the first applicant is very important. I think after 15 days, your chances of getting that position is close to zero because most of the applicants are already being assessed. So striking when the iron's hot and just being aware that there's so many opportunities. The thing is that it's all throughout the United States. So you might have to go somewhere where it's not in California. You can see that these are very common, very big companies. Local companies will not be in here. So that's where you got an advantage if you feel like you're not getting any responses from these big companies. So don't stop trying. It's always an iterative process. And I believe that you got this. That's 75%. The other 25 is through just, I want to work at Amazon. I want to work at Facebook, all these big name companies. So, any other questions? Yes. Yes. The question was, how much time do I put in per day to apply for jobs? I think the biggest legwork for applying for jobs is telling your resume and cover letter. Like I said, that's why I have archetypes, themes, you could call it, for my resume and cover letter. Themes. So, getting these common themes out, finding that pattern for yourself is key. Speeding up that process. So when I use Simplify, most of the job applications go through Workday. And so I was able to kind of close my mind and just have my computer browser do its own thing. And then during the list your skills section, I'll just delete the whole thing and copy and paste from my clipboard all the way in with comma separated values. So I would do that. I would do that. I would think about what's your current archetype that you have with your resume, what types of companies align with your personality and values, and see where you go from there. I would say that's the biggest legwork in terms of minimizing my time. And to answer your question fully, during October, November, December, I was applying for jobs about 3 hours out of the day. I relaxed on the weekend. I relaxed on the weekend, unless something big happens, like a big tech company posted a job offer. Okay. Any other questions? Given the context that you've given me, I'm thinking about you as a student, right? You don't have that much experience right now. So I would say, no, I wouldn't really tailor it. But if I did have experience, if I did have different leadership roles that I could whip out, I would probably, yeah, my resume to specific types of job titles, right? Because sometimes they're looking for different things, right? A software developer at Google is much different than a software developer at Intel, right? These are classified for me in my brain very differently, right? Even though they have the same job title, even though they have the same job title. So it's just aligning that personalities and values again, and also being okay with just like saying, this is a software development role, but the company is not for me, right? Sometimes it's just saying no to that company and just leaving it be. But that's more up to interpretation for you. Any other questions? So, learning a new skill. How would I learn a new skill for a prospective job? That's a good question. But I don't want to give you a simple answer like just play around with it, right? Because there's more, just a little bit more to that. I think just playing around with it kind of, there's a mix, right? Learn how to read documentation and also play around with it. Try to have a goal in mind. Try to build something for people. For example, right? So starting out, I was learning about databases. I was like, okay, what the hell is SQL? And then I was like, I don't know what SQL is. I just know select star from star, select everything, give me everything. And I was just like, Okay. Is that it? Right? Is this just different spreadsheets that is connected by some type of key? And then I was like, okay, let me try to play around with that. How do I connect things? You could go down a rabbit hole. Just go deep. The idea here for sticking yourself out is to go deep, right? That's what it means to have high conscientious trait. You go deep on something. You go very deep, as deep as you can, and maybe feasible, right? So just be, be able to go as far as you can. And maybe to kind of guide yourself, have a goal in mind, and then focus that energy towards that. I think it's about discovery. I think right now it's all about discovering. Okay. So as a freshman, the question was, as a freshman, when would I start applying for internships? Okay. So as a freshman, right, I didn't start out as a freshman. I mean, here specifically. My experience kind of goes into like sophomore year. But what types of roles? Let me ask, what type of roles are you looking for? So the general advice is just apply. That's pretty simple. Just apply. Just put your name out there and maybe roll the lottery, right? Just roll. Be out there, advertise yourself. And the funny thing is that during the time when I was a sophomore, I got two phone interviews. And the funny thing was that those two phone interviews prepared me for the interview at ETS, So I think it's a learning experience and just putting yourself out there. That's the general advice. That's the general advice. The not so general advice is to connect with people. Your network is so vast and so wide, right? I was thinking small back then, right? I was thinking about just classmates and then graduating and whoop-de-doo, let's find me a job, right? That's not a good way of thinking about it, right? People like to help people. And when you find those people, don't let them go and treat them nice. Be aware that, your network is wide as you make it. Go join a club, make time for it. Maybe that might help. Be an active participant in events like these, you want, because you're here, you want to succeed. I've put this event out for a month now and only you guys came. So you guys are taking that first step to kind of unraveling this game. After this event, maybe go talk to somebody. I know a lot of people here, especially Derek. You could try and network, talk to them. Professors, like I said, the career events, right? Career events, be open to new connections and then choose, which ones you want to nurture and which ones you feel like aren't serving your end goal. I know that might be hard to do for some people, cutting off a connection, but in terms of focusing your time on something that matters to you, you kind of have to do that sometimes and maybe understand what you're doing too, right? I don't want to say just cut people off. That's not what I'm saying. Be present and aware and be kind to people. Be respectful. And if they don't respect you after that, you kind of know where they stand. All right. These are very good questions. So the question was, how long do I spend on learning and practicing lead code? To kind of distill it in a few minutes so that you can understand, the number of hours doesn't matter. You get diminishing returns on the amount of hours you put in versus what learning you get out of it. So I'd say 1 hour max a day, because all you really need to do to understand it is look for patterns and recognize those patterns. So the initial understanding of a data structure, you will try to punch something and you're just frustrated on how to even use this and what does it even do. The goal is to learn the data structure deeply on its functions, its use cases, right? How to use them, and also maybe how to build them. Some people know how to use a set, right? But not a lot of people know how to implement a set. And so I think a lot of learning comes from implementing something and asking the reason, why is this even relevant to begin with? So I'd say in class, be aware of your data structures, set, queue, list, hash map, trees, B tree, tries, heaps. There's min heaps, there's max heaps. If you know all of these, then you're in a pretty good shape. If you don't know That's some place to start, okay? The Data Structures and Algorithms Club go deep into this. You could look on campus groups. They will help you, and they're active. They all have the same goal of learning how to do leak code, learning how to implement and use data structures. These are my tokens to you so that you have something to guide you on your journey to make it into maybe a big tech company like Google or Amazon. All right. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate your time. Karaoke party? We're having for 30 minutes. This is like what? 30 minutes is like $50 of karaoke, I think. No? Okay. Just chill. Have a nice day. Talk to somebody. Smile. Be present with somebody. Just add their LinkedIn. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, just be social. Be social. Okay. Bye.